The Wild West, contrary to its depiction in films as a realm dominated by gunslingers and outlaws, was indeed fraught with peril. Due to the vast distances between settlements and the sparse presence of law enforcement, criminal activities were rampant. This lack of immediate legal oversight forced individuals to handle conflicts and threats personally, often leading to terrifying results. Number 10. The people under the floor. In 1870, a traveler was navigating the desolate mountains of New Mexico when he stumbled upon a sturdy wooden cabin nestled at the base of the Palo Flechado Pass. The cabin's owner, who introduced himself as Charles Kennedy, welcomed the traveler and invited him inside for a meal. As the traveler's host, Kennedy's Ute wife prepared dinner. The guest took a seat next to the couple's young son and casually inquired about the presence of other Native Americans in the vicinity. The boy paused, then responded with a chilling remark. "Can't you smell the one Papa put under the floor?" Unbeknownst to the traveler, he had entered the home of one of the most notorious outlaws of the West. Charles Kennedy was known to have gunned down at least 14 people who had sought refuge at his remote homestead while passing through the pass. After the traveler arrived, Kennedy shot him, and then, in a fit of rage, brutally shot his son to death for almost revealing their secret to the traveler. The murder of her son was the breaking point for Kennedy's wife. Seizing an opportunity while Kennedy was in a drunken stupor, she fled the cabin and made the arduous journey to Elizabethtown. There, she divulged the horrific details of her husband's crimes to the authorities. Upon discovering the gruesome evidence, the incensed townspeople exacted their own form of justice. The next day, they dragged Charles Kennedy by horse until he was suffocated, then displayed him grisly outside the local inn as a stern warning to others. Charles Kennedy's story highlights the lawless and brutality that could be found in the remote areas of the American West. The lack of effective law enforcement in these isolated regions often left settlers vulnerable to such atrocities. This case also underscores the extreme measures taken by frontier communities to protect themselves and establish a semblance of order in an era marked by widespread lawlessness and danger. Number 9. Clay Allison's War Dance. The mob that lynched Charles Kennedy, led by Clay Allison, may have killed more people than the notorious criminal whose head he kicked off. Allison was known for his extreme methods of resolving conflicts. In one instance, he proposed settling a minor disagreement with a neighbor by digging a grave and suggesting they fight to the death inside it, eliminating the need to bury the loser afterward. Allison's reputation for brutality was further solidified during the Colfax County War, a significant land dispute in New Mexico that resulted in approximately 200 deaths. Early in the conflict, Allison orchestrated the lynching of a local constable whom he suspected of being an outlaw. This act of vigilantism highlighted his willingness to take the law into his own hands. The violence escalated when the murdered constable's uncle sought vengeance. Allison, anticipating the retaliation, killed the man in a local saloon. Following the shooting, Allison's behavior turned bizarre and macabre. He reportedly stripped naked, tied a red ribbon around his genitals, and performed a war dance around the crime scene. This grotesque display further cemented his image as a fearsome and unhinged individual. Clay Allison's actions during this period exemplify the extreme measures taken by individuals in the Wild West to exert control and administer what they perceived as justice. His involvement in the Colfax County War and other violent episodes illustrates the pervasive lawlessness of the time. The war itself was a complex conflict rooted in competing land claims and economic interests, exacerbated by the lack of effective legal and governmental oversight in the region. The Colfax County War began in the late 1870s, fueled by disputes over land grants originally issued during Spanish and Mexican rule. As new settlers moved in, tensions rose between them and the original landholders, leading to violent confrontations. Allison, with his penchant for brutality, played a significant role in these clashes, often blurring the lines between vigilante justice and outright criminality. Allison's legacy is a stark reminder of the chaotic and often brutal reality of frontier life. The violence he perpetrated and his methods of instilling fear underscore the challenges faced by communities attempting to establish order in an environment where official law enforcement was frequently absent or ineffective. His story, intertwined with the broader narrative of the Colfax County War, reflects the turbulent and often violent efforts to impose order and justice in the American West. Number 8. The Crusade of Felipe Espinosa. Felipe Espinosa was a minor criminal who harbored intense animosity towards the influx of Anglo-American settlers in 19th-century Colorado. A fervent member of the Penitentes, a local Catholic brotherhood known for their severe self-flagellation and other acts of self-mortification, Felipe's resentment grew as American soldiers attempted to arrest him for his bandit activities. In response, Felipe declared a personal vendetta against the Protestant newcomers. Joined by his brother Vivian and later his nephew Jose, Felipe embarked on a brutal campaign through the Colorado mountains, took down every Anglo settler they encountered. The bodies of their victims often bore a cross carved into their chests, a chilling signature of their attacks. Felipe even taunted the authorities through letters to the governor, boasting about their deadly exploits. "We have killed 32, he wrote, challenging the governor to find anyone who had matched their grim tally. Despite a concerted manhunt that resulted in Vivian's death, Felipe remained elusive. In a letter to his wife, Felipe arrogantly proclaimed, "They have hands and cannot touch me. They have feet and cannot catch me. They have eyes and cannot see me. They have ears and cannot hear me." His defiance underscored the difficulties the authorities faced in capturing him. Desperate to end Felipe's reign of terror, the government enlisted the help of Tom Tobin, a renowned mountain man. Tobin tracked Felipe and Jose Espinosa through the rugged Sangre de Cristo Mountains. Their pursuit culminated in a violent confrontation near the summit of Mount Mestas, where Tobin shot both Felipe and Jose. Tobin's return to Fort Garland marked the gruesome end of Felipe Espinosa's spree. He claimed the bounty by giving Felipe's head to the colonel who hired him, who was stunned by it. The Espinosa saga is a stark illustration of the extreme measures taken during the volatile settlement period in the American West. The conflict between the Espinosas and the Anglo settlers was emblematic of the broader cultural and territorial clashes that defined this era. Felipe's alignment with the Penitentes also highlights the complex interplay between religion and violence during this time. The involvement of Tom Tobin, a figure familiar with the harsh realities of frontier life, was crucial in ending the Espinosa threat. His successful tracking and killing of Felipe and Jose Espinosa is a testament to the role of experienced frontiersmen in maintaining order during this tumultuous period. This episode in Colorado's history is a vivid example of the brutal and often personal nature of conflict in the Old West. Number 7. The fight with the snake. The exact cause of the conflict that resulted in 11 fatalities in Judge Blackhawk's Six Killers courtroom in Going Snake remains unclear. However, the dispute escalated dramatically in 1872 when Zeke Proctor visited Jim Kesterton's mill and shot at him. Although Kesterton survived his injuries, his wife, Polly Beck, was accidentally killed by a stray bullet. The incident occurred within the Cherokee Nation, and both Proctor and Beck were Cherokee, making it logical for the case to be adjudicated by the Cherokee courts. Proctor, however, was from an influential family and a member of the powerful Kituwa Society. The Beck family, fearing they would not receive a fair trial in Indian Territory, sought to have the case moved to the federal court at Fort Smith. Their request was denied, leading to further tension. Believing justice would not be served, a group of Beck family members decided to take matters into their own hands. They entered the courtroom with the intention of ensuring their version of justice was met. However, their plan did not unfold as anticipated. The Becks, finding themselves trapped in the doorway of the small, windowless courtroom, encountered unexpected resistance. Zeke Proctor and several guards, caught off guard by the intrusion, managed to respond. The ensuing confrontation was chaotic and tragic. In the confined space, the altercation resulted in the deaths of 11 individuals, 7 from the Beck family, 2 from the Proctor family, a lawman, and a U.S. Marshal. After the incident, the participants quickly dispersed, and no one was held accountable for the tragic outcome. This event underscores the intense familial and societal loyalties that characterized many conflicts in the American West. The involvement of the Kituwa Society highlights the complex social and political dynamics within the Cherokee Nation at the time. The society, which was dedicated to preserving Cherokee traditions and sovereignty, had significant influence, complicating the legal proceedings. The Beck family's push for federal intervention reflects broader tensions between federal authorities and Native American governance. This clash of jurisdictions was not uncommon, as Native American tribes sought to maintain their legal autonomy in the face of expanding U.S. authority. Moreover, the incident in Judge Sixkiller's courtroom illustrates the challenges of maintaining order and delivering justice in a period marked by significant cultural and legal upheaval. This case also highlights the difficulties faced by the Cherokee Nation in navigating the pressures of internal governance while contending with external influences. The failure to bring any participants to justice underscores the limitations of the legal systems in place and the pervasive sense of impunity that could arise in such volatile contexts. Number 6. The legendary gunfighter Dallas Staudenmeier. In 1881, the city of El Paso, Texas, appointed the renowned gunfighter Dallas Staudenmeier as their new marshal. Staudenmeier made a significant impact on the town's lawlessness, but his methods were extreme, involving numerous confrontations that resulted in fatalities. He reportedly used the church bell for target practice and was often seen under the influence of alcohol. When the town council attempted to remove him from his position, Staudenmeier boldly confronted them, daring anyone to disarm him. Staudenmeier's most notable confrontation occurred just 3 days into his tenure. Known as the 4 dead in 5 seconds fight, the incident began when a local troublemaker, John Hale, seized a gun from his friend George Campbell and fatally wounded one of Staudenmeier's constables. Reacting swiftly, Staudenmeier drew his pistols, and in the ensuing chaos, Hale, a bystander, and Campbell, who protested his involvement, were all shot. This incident significantly affected the local community, especially since Campbell was closely associated with the influential Manning brothers. Seeking retribution, the Mannings hired Bill Johnson to eliminate Staudenmeier. However, Johnson's attempt failed when his shotgun discharged prematurely, giving Staudenmeier the chance to respond, resulting in Johnson's death from his injuries. Staudenmeier continued his controversial tenure in El Paso, maintaining order through fear and force. His time in the city ended 18 months later in another altercation, this time with the Manning brothers, which ultimately led to his death. The story of Dallas Staudenmeier highlights the intense and often lawless environment of western frontier towns in the late 19th century. His appointment as marshal came during a period when such towns were desperate for order, often turning to individuals with reputations for toughness and a willingness to use violence. Staudenmeier's approach, while effective in reducing crime, also perpetuated a cycle of violence that characterized the era. The Manning brothers' decision to retaliate against Staudenmeier by hiring an assassin reflects the limited options for legal recourse and the prevalent use of vigilante justice. Their failure to successfully remove Staudenmeier underscores the inherent risks and uncertainties of such extra-legal measures. Staudenmeier's eventual death in a confrontation with the Manning brothers highlights the often short and violent careers of lawmen in the Old West. The reliance on individuals like Staudenmeier, with their propensity for violence, illustrates the challenges faced by frontier communities striving for stability and security amidst widespread disorder. Number 5. Harrell-Higgins feud. After returning to Lampasas, Texas, the Harrell brothers managed to secure a jury composed of their longtime associates, resulting in their acquittal for the murders committed in New Mexico. However, their past actions eventually caught up with them. In 1877, Merritt Harrell was killed in a bar altercation with rancher Pink Higgins. Given the memory of the violence that erupted after Ben Harrell's death, the Higgins family felt compelled to take preemptive action. In March of that year, members of the Higgins family ambushed Tom and Mart Harrell as they were heading to court. Despite being outnumbered, Mart Harrell, a seasoned and formidable fighter, defended his injured brother and managed to repel the attackers. By June, the conflict between the Harrells and the Higgins had escalated, turning Lampasas into a small-scale battleground as the two families engaged in ongoing skirmishes. The tension and hostilities disrupted the town's daily life, drawing the attention of the Texas Rangers. To restore peace, the Texas Rangers intervened and compelled both families to sign a peace treaty. Remarkably, the Harrells were permitted to continue their activities for another year. However, the uneasy truce ended when an angry mob, allegedly provoked by Pink Higgins, shot Mart and Tom Harrell. The saga of the Harrells and the Higgins reflects the turbulent nature of frontier justice in the late 19th century. The Harrell brothers' ability to secure an acquittal through a biased jury highlights the influence of personal connections and the limitations of the legal system in frontier towns. The intervention of the Texas Rangers to negotiate a peace treaty demonstrates the authorities' efforts to impose order amidst the chaos. However, the continued criminal activities of the Harrells following the treaty indicate the difficulties in maintaining lasting peace and the challenges faced by law enforcement in curbing entrenched criminal behavior. Overall, the feud between the Harrells and the Higgins provides a vivid example of the complexities and harsh realities of life in the American West, where lawless and personal vendettas often dictated the course of events. The involvement of the Texas Rangers and the eventual mob justice reflect the broader struggle for stability and the rule of law in a period marked by frequent and intense conflict. Number 4. Mangas Coloradas. The Bascom incident ignited a brutal conflict, exemplified by the death of Mangas Coloradas. During the American Civil War, the Apaches successfully expelled white settlers from much of southern Arizona. However, as the Civil War drew to a close, more troops arrived, signaling the inevitable end of Apache resistance. Recognizing this, Mangas Coloradas, the esteemed chief and father-in-law of Cochise, sought to negotiate peace. When Mangas Coloradas approached under a flag of truce, General Joseph West immediately ordered his arrest. West, referencing the chief's violent history along the old stage line, instructed the guards that he wanted Mangas Coloradas dead by morning. That night, the guards went into the room where the chief was being held. The next morning, they reported that he had been killed while attempting to escape. The conflict continued for several more years, underscoring the deep-seated tensions and hostilities between the Apache and the U.S. military. Mangas Coloradas' attempt at negotiation illustrates the desperation and pragmatism of Apache leaders, who understood the unsustainable nature of their resistance against a rapidly growing and better-equipped military force. The arrest of Mangas Coloradas under a flag of truce reflects the broader context of mistrust and betrayal that characterized many interactions between Native American tribes and U.S. authorities. Such actions eroded any possibility of peaceful resolutions and further fueled the cycle of conflict. General West's directive and the subsequent death of Mangas Coloradas highlight the harsh measures employed by military leaders to subdue Native American resistance. This incident reveals the complexities of frontier warfare, where strategic decisions were often driven by a combination of military necessity and personal vendettas. The events surrounding the Bascom incident and the death of Mangas Coloradas provide a poignant example of the tragic consequences of cultural clashes and the breakdown of diplomatic efforts during a tumultuous period in American history. Number 3. Horrell Brothers. The Horrell brothers were a notorious family of cowboys responsible for some of the most troubling incidents in the Old West. In 1873, they shot 5 policemen in a Texas bar and subsequently fled to Lincoln County, New Mexico. Shortly after their arrival, Ben Horrell, in a drunken state, killed another lawman, which led to his death at the hands of a local posse. Most of Ben's killers were of Mexican descent, prompting the remaining Horrell brothers to seek revenge against the Hispanic community. This led to a series of retaliatory actions, beginning with the murder of 2 Mexican Americans on the Horrell Ranch. The conflict escalated a few weeks later when the Horrells interrupted a wedding reception, resulting in the deaths of 4 guests. In response, the local Hispanic community armed themselves and took positions in the hills around the Horrell property. Despite a brief siege, the Horrells managed to escape before their ranch was set on fire. The Horrell brothers, now accompanied by a group of Texans, embarked on a campaign through the countryside, targeting Mexicans and even killing one Anglo man who was married to a Mexican woman. The violent spree caused significant unrest in the region. The conflict eventually drew the attention of local authorities who sought military assistance to restore order. This intervention forced the Horrells to flee back to Texas. Official estimates suggest that at least 29 people lost their lives during this period of unrest. The actions of the Horrell brothers illustrate the volatile nature of frontier justice and the deep-seated ethnic tensions of the time. The murder of Ben Horrell and the subsequent retaliations highlight how personal vendettas could spiral into broader conflicts, impacting entire communities. The Horrell brothers' ability to evade capture initially and their violent reprisals reflect the challenges faced by law enforcement in maintaining order in sparsely populated and lawless territories. The involvement of the military underscores the severity of the conflict and the limitations of local authorities in dealing with such widespread violence. The conflict not only exemplifies the lawlessness of the time, but also the deep divisions within frontier society. The Horrell brothers' story is a stark reminder of the complexities and brutal realities of life in the Old West, where lawlessness often prevailed, and personal grievances could escalate into large-scale violence, with devastating consequences for entire communities. Number 2. Bascom Affair. In 1860, the inexperienced Lieutenant George Bascom was tasked with rescuing a young boy who had been abducted in a Native American raid. Bascom mistakenly believed that the Chiricahua Apache were responsible, so he set out to locate their leader, Cochise. Unaware that he was being pursued, Cochise, along with his wife and son, unknowingly rode into Bascom's camp one day for a visit. A tense exchange followed, with Bascom issuing various threats and demanding the boy's return. Cochise, clearly frustrated, insisted that he did not have the boy and therefore could not comply with the demand. When Bascom declared that he was taking Cochise and his family into custody, Cochise quickly cut through the side of the tent and escaped amidst a hail of bullets. Despite Cochise's escape, Bascom still held Cochise's wife and son. In response, the Apaches attacked a wagon train, leading to the capture of several individuals whom they hoped to use as leverage. Bascom, however, was adamant about including the kidnapped boy in any potential exchange. Angered by Bascom's refusal to negotiate, Cochise decided to take drastic measures and withdrew. Following this, the Americans also took severe actions against their captives and eventually retreated. This series of events sparked a prolonged conflict that would last for a decade and result in numerous casualties. The Bascom Affair, as it came to be known, is a significant example of how miscommunication and mistrust can lead to prolonged and devastating conflicts. Bascom's initial misjudgment regarding the responsible party for the kidnapping set off a chain reaction that had far-reaching consequences. His insistence on holding Cochise's family as hostages, despite Cochise's clear denials, exacerbated the situation. Cochise's decision to visit Bascom's camp without any suspicion reflects the complex nature of relationships and expectations during this period. His attempt to peacefully engage with Bascom, only to be met with hostility, highlights the deep-seated mistrust between Native American tribes and U.S. military forces. The decade-long war that followed illustrates the enduring impact of the Bascom affair. It not only affected the immediate parties involved, but also had broader implications for the region. The conflict disrupted the lives of countless individuals, leading to significant loss of life and altering the course of relations between Native American tribes and the U.S. government. The Bascom affair serves as a poignant reminder of the importance of diplomacy, understanding, and careful judgment in conflict resolution. Number 1. Papa Nicetas. In 1870, 4 individuals settled in Labette County, Kansas, not far from where a young Laura Ingalls Wilder lived with her parents. They called themselves the Benders and claimed to be a family, although the exact nature of their relationship later came into question. Ma and Pa Bender spoke only German, but their children were fluent in English. The family soon transformed their one-room cabin into a small inn. They were rumored to practice magic, and Kate Bender gained local popularity as a fortune-teller and spiritualist. In the following years, settlers traveling through Labette County began to disappear. Body parts were discovered in the countryside, but the community was unsure who to hold accountable. Eventually, the locals convened a meeting and decided to organize a search party to inspect every house in the area. However, this plan was delayed by poor weather. By the time the search party arrived at the Bender residence, the family had already fled. Inside the cabin, a trap door beneath the bed led to a hidden basement, where the floor showed evidence of bloodstains. 8 bodies were found buried in the garden, each with similar wounds. The Benders were never located, and the true number of their victims remains unknown. The mysterious disappearance of the Benders and the gruesome discoveries at their inn reflect the dark undercurrents that could exist in frontier communities. The fact that Ma and Pa Bender only spoke German, while their children were fluent in English, suggests they may have been recent immigrants attempting to blend into American society while maintaining their cultural heritage. Kate Bender's role as a fortune-teller and spiritualist indicates how some settlers sought solace and guidance in mystical practices during a time of uncertainty and hardship. Her popularity points to the widespread fascination with and belief in the supernatural among frontier communities. The inability to locate the Benders after their escape speaks to the difficulties in tracking and apprehending individuals in the vast and often lawless frontier. The case of the Bender family remains a chilling reminder of the potential for darkness within seemingly ordinary lives and the importance of community vigilance. It also underscores the fragility of trust in small, isolated communities and the impact that fear and suspicion can have on communal cohesion and security. As you've delved into these 10 terrifying stories about life in the Wild West, it's clear that this era was fraught with danger, intrigue, and the unexpected. From notorious outlaws to gruesome crimes, the tales of the Wild West continue to captivate our imagination and remind us of the harsh realities of life on the frontier. If you've enjoyed exploring these tales from the Wild West, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more gripping content on history, mysteries, and the fascinating stories that shape our world. Don't miss out on the next thrilling chapter. Subscribe now and embark on a journey through history like never before.